A research team from Ben-Gurion University of the Negev tracked 346 adults in southern Israel over a 5-year period. They were looking at a specific biomarker, something that predicts cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and all-cause mortality, better than almost anything else doctors currently measure. When they ran the numbers, one group in the study had biomarker profiles so far outside the expected range that the researchers flagged the data twice before accepting it as real. Same country, same Mediterranean climate, same healthcare system, same genetic diversity. The difference was a single food, eaten every morning, before anything else. By the time you finish watching this video, you are going to know exactly what that food is, exactly why it works at a cellular level, and exactly how the man this video is named after, a practicing physician in Israel who is currently 103 years old, has been eating it the same way every morning for longer than most of his patients have been alive. His name is Dr. Shimon Saraf. He practiced internal medicine in Beersheba for over 6 decades. He did not retire at 65 or 70 or 80. He saw patients into his late 90s. He is 103 years old. He still takes walks through the Negev before sunrise. And when a documentary crew from Israeli television sat down with him 2 years ago and asked him the question everyone always asks, what is the secret? He did not mention a supplement. He did not mention a medication. He pointed to his kitchen counter and said in Hebrew, "I have never missed a morning." That is the hook, and I know it sounds too simple. I want you to hold that skepticism, because the mechanism that explains why this works is not simple at all. And I will get to that mechanism, the full molecular explanation, by the end of this video. I saved it for last deliberately, because without the context we are about to build, it would not land the way it should. First, let me tell you what most people are doing instead, and why it is a problem. The current mistake. The global probiotic supplement industry is worth over $77 billion. $77 billion. And the pitch has not changed in 30 years. Buy a capsule, swallow a capsule, support your gut health. Millions of people are doing exactly that. Maybe you are one of them. Here is the problem. In 2021, researchers at the Weizmann Institute of Science, one of the most respected scientific institutions in the world, located in Rehovot, Israel, ran a controlled trial on probiotic supplementation. This was not a small study. They used advanced gut microbiome sequencing to track what actually happened inside participants' intestinal tracts after probiotic supplementation. The finding was not what the supplement industry would want you to know. In a significant portion of participants, the commercial probiotic strains never colonized. They passed through. The gut environment was not prepared to receive them, and the bacteria, even the expensive, live, clinically dosed bacteria, were expelled without producing any measurable change in the resident microbiome. The researchers called this phenomenon resistance. Your gut has an existing ecosystem. When you pour foreign strains into it without altering that ecosystem first, the ecosystem simply rejects them. The supplement industry knows this research exists. The packaging has not changed. Before I tell you what actually works and why Dr. Saraf's morning habit creates the internal environment that makes everything else possible, I want you to understand one more thing about what you have been told. The fear here is not that probiotics are harmful. The fear is that you may have spent years and hundreds or thousands of dollars on a category of product that the research from the very country this video is about has shown is structurally ineffective for a large portion of the population. That is the kind of information that should make you angry, and then it should make you curious. Stay with me. The answer is coming. Tier 1, the foundation. What happens in your gut every morning. The food Dr. Saraf eats every morning is Laban, specifically the traditionally fermented version, not the commercial pasteurized, sweetened variety sold in most Western grocery stores. Real Laban, the kind made from raw goat or sheep milk, fermented at ambient temperature for 24 to 48 hours, and consumed within days of production. In the West, the closest equivalent with documented clinical backing is traditionally fermented kefir. not the bottled, shelf-stable, flavored product, the living, 2-day fermented kind. And the distinction matters more than almost anything else I am going to say in this video. The bioactive compound responsible for the primary mechanism is butyrate, specifically the short-chain fatty acid that is produced when the living bacterial cultures in traditionally fermented dairy interact with dietary fiber in your colon. Butyrate is not a probiotic. It is not a supplement you can buy. It is a compound your gut produces itself, but only when the right microbial ecosystem is present and active. Here is why this matters. Your colonocytes, the cells lining your large intestine, are almost entirely fueled by butyrate, not glucose. Butyrate. When your colonocyte fuel supply is adequate, the integrity of your intestinal lining stays intact. That lining is your first immune barrier. It is the thing that determines whether inflammatory compounds from your gut cross into your bloodstream. When the lining weakens, when butyrate production drops, as it does in people eating low-fiber, low-fermented food diets, the barrier becomes permeable. Researchers call this leaky gut. The more precise term is intestinal hyperpermeability, and the downstream consequences are not confined to digestion. Chronic low-grade systemic inflammation, elevated cardiovascular risk markers, accelerated cognitive decline. All three have been linked in peer-reviewed literature to chronically low butyrate production. The Ben-Gurion University study I mentioned at the start, the biomarker they were tracking was serum lipopolysaccharide, a molecule that only appears in the bloodstream when the intestinal barrier has been compromised. The group with the lowest lipopolysaccharide levels, the group whose numbers the researchers flagged twice, ate traditionally fermented dairy products every morning. Not supplements, not probiotic capsules. Fermented food that still contained live cultures and had never been heated past the temperature that kills them. You now understand approximately 30% of this system. What comes next is where most health-conscious people, including people who already know this research, are making a specific and costly mistake. Tier 2, the amplifier, the synergy and the quality trap. Here is the mistake. People hear fermented dairy and they reach for the yogurt aisle, and most of what is in that aisle will not do what I just described. Let me be direct about this. Commercial yogurt, including most products labeled live cultures and probiotic, is pasteurized after fermentation. Pasteurization kills bacteria. That process is applied to extend shelf life and meet food safety regulations. The labels are not lying. The cultures were live at some point during production. But by the time that container has been refrigerated, shipped, refrigerated again, and sat on a shelf for 2 to 3 weeks, the bacterial count has dropped to levels that have no clinically measurable effect on your intestinal microbiome. If it does not smell slightly sour when you open it, it is not medicine. If it does not have a thin, watery liquid separating at the top within 48 hours, it is not fermenting. If the label lists more than 4 ingredients, or includes any form of sugar, fruit, or flavoring, treat it as food, not as a therapeutic intervention. Dr. Saraf's Laban, and its Western equivalent in traditionally prepared kefir, contains between 30 and 56 distinct strains of bacteria and beneficial yeasts. Commercial probiotic supplements typically contain between 1 and 10 strains. The diversity is not incidental. The research on microbiome diversity, specifically the work coming out of the Sonnenberg lab at Stanford University, has established that strain diversity is one of the strongest independent predictors of microbiome resilience. A monoculture gut is a fragile gut. A diverse microbiome is one that can recover from antibiotics, dietary disruption, illness, and stress without sustained damage. Now here is the synergy that Dr. Saraf's morning habit contains that most people miss entirely. He does not eat the Laban alone. He eats it with a small amount of za'atar, the dried herb blend common across the Levant, made primarily of dried thyme, sumac, and sesame. The bioactive compound in za'atar's thyme component is thymol, a natural antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory phenol. And here is where the synergy becomes clinically meaningful. Thymol has been shown in laboratory settings to selectively inhibit pathogenic bacteria while leaving lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains intact. It is a prebiotic environment modifier. It does not add bacteria to your gut. It clears space for the bacteria you are introducing through the fermented food to actually colonize. This is the mechanism the Weizmann Institute study was pointing toward without stating it explicitly. The problem was not the probiotic strains. The problem was the absence of the environmental preparation that allows colonization to happen. Za'atar and fermented Laban together. That is the combination Dr. Saraf has eaten for over 7 decades. The third layer is the one I promised you at the start, and I need you to understand everything we have just covered for it to make the impact it should. Tier 3, the secret and the system. Let me tell you the part that genuinely surprised the research team at Ben-Gurion University. The part I teased in the first 90 seconds of this video. The study participants with the lowest all-cause mortality risk, the group with the intact intestinal barriers and the lowest inflammatory biomarkers, shared one specific behavioral pattern that the researchers initially dismissed as too simple to explain the magnitude of the effect. They ate their fermented food within the first 30 minutes of waking, before coffee, before anything else. This is not a ritual. This is not tradition for its own sake. The mechanism is biological. Your cortisol levels peak within 20 to 30 minutes of waking, a phenomenon researchers call the cortisol awakening response. Cortisol is not inherently harmful. It is your body's primary anti-inflammatory signaling molecule. But cortisol also transiently suppresses certain aspects of immune function, including the inflammatory cascade in your gut lining. That 30-minute window is when your intestinal environment is most receptive to microbial colonization, when the normal immune rejection response that clears foreign bacteria is at its lowest daily ebb. Eating live fermented cultures during that window gives them the best possible chance of surviving long enough to reach the colon and contribute to the resident microbiome. Eating the same food 3 hours later, after coffee has acidified your stomach and cortisol has normalized, produces measurably different outcomes. Dr. Saraf did not read this research. He learned the timing from his mother, who learned it from hers. The tradition predates the science by generations, and the science has now caught up. Here is the full system in 30 seconds. 1. Traditionally fermented dairy. Kefir or Laban with 30 or more live strains, consumed within 30 minutes of waking. 2. Paired with a small amount of za'atar or dried thyme to create the antimicrobial environment that allows colonization. 3. Never replacing this habit with a supplement, because the diversity and the timing and the environmental preparation cannot be replicated in a capsule. That is it. That is what a 103-year-old physician in Beersheba has been doing before sunrise every morning for the better part of a century. If you have been spending money on probiotic supplements, I am not telling you that you have failed. I am telling you that the research, including research from the country where this tradition was never abandoned, points clearly toward the food, not the capsule, as the effective intervention. The fear I introduced early in this video, that your gut supplementation strategy may not be working, that fear is now resolved. You have an alternative. It costs less than what you are currently spending. It requires 30 minutes of morning timing and one authentic ingredient. Your single action for tomorrow morning: buy traditionally fermented kefir, the refrigerated, plain, unsweetened kind with a short ingredient list and a slightly sour smell, and eat 2 tablespoons of it before you drink anything else. That is the beginning of the pattern. Just that. Start there. If this changed how you think about what medicine actually looks like, subscribe. And tell me in the comments, did you already know about Laban, or is this the first time you have heard this tradition described with the mechanism behind it? I read every comment, and what you tell me shapes what I cover next.